Unknown. Henderson Field, Guadalcanal, 2200 hours. In the suffocating darkness of the Solomon Islands, Private Robert Youngdeer of the 164th Infantry Regiment checks his M1 Garand rifle one final time. His unit had arrived on the island just 11 days earlier, on October 13th, becoming the first US Army formation to engage in offensive operations against the Japanese. Now, in positions alongside Marines still armed with bolt-action Springfield rifles, the soldiers of the 164th grip their semi-automatic weapons, 8 rounds loaded in each en-bloc clip. Through the oppressive humidity and the cacophony of nocturnal insects comes a sound that freezes the blood of every American soldier. Thousands of Japanese troops beginning their charge, screaming banzai and totsugeki at the top of their lungs. Among the attacking force, Lieutenant Kenji Yamamoto of the 29th Infantry Regiment leads his platoon forward, his Type 38 Arisaka rifle with its exceptionally long 31.4-inch barrel proving unwieldy in the dense undergrowth. The 5-round internal magazine has been loaded with 6.5 by 50mm Arisaka rounds, each one requiring him to work the bolt action to chamber, up, back, forward, down. Behind him, some newer troops carry the Type 99 rifle chambered in the more powerful 7.7 by 58mm cartridge, but still bolt action, still limited to 5 rounds before reloading with stripper clips. What happens in the next 12 hours of savage combat will demonstrate why American infantry possessed an overwhelming advantage in firepower that the Japanese never anticipated. The technological gap between the semi-automatic M1 Garand and the bolt-action Arisaka rifles would prove as decisive as any tactical doctrine, revealing how industrial innovation and mass production could determine the outcome of infantry combat in the world's first truly modern war. The battle about to unfold at Henderson Field would showcase a fundamental truth of the Pacific War. While Japanese soldiers displayed extraordinary courage and determination, they were handicapped by rifle technology that belonged to the previous war. The M1 Garand's semi-automatic action, 8-round capacity, and powerful .3006 Springfield cartridge gave American forces a rate of fire and stopping power that Japanese infantry, armed with bolt-action Arisaka rifles, simply could not match. This disparity in small arms capability would be multiplied across thousands of engagements throughout the Pacific theatre, from the steaming jungles of New Guinea to the volcanic ash of Iwo Jima, contributing significantly to the eventual American victory. The M1 Garand emerged from the mind of Canadian-American designer John Cantius Garand, who began work at Springfield Armory in 1919. After 17 years of development, testing and refinement, the US Army officially adopted his design on January 9, 1936, making America the first nation to issue a semi-automatic rifle as standard equipment to its infantry forces. The rifle fired the powerful .3006 Springfield cartridge, launching a 150-grain M2 ball projectile at 2,805 feet per second from its 24-inch barrel, generating 2,656 foot-pounds of muzzle energy. The genius of Garand's design lay in its gas-operated rotating bolt system. A small portion of propellant gas was tapped from a port near the muzzle, driving an operating rod that cycled the action automatically. Each pull of the trigger fired 1 round, with the gas pressure automatically ejecting the spent case and chambering the next round without any manual intervention from the shooter. A trained soldier could accurately fire between 40 and 50 aimed shots per minute, compared to the 15 to 20 rounds per minute achievable with a bolt-action rifle. The 8-round en-bloc clip, inserted from above into the fixed magazine, could be reloaded in under 3 seconds by a practiced rifleman. The development process had not been without challenges. Early prototypes used a primer-actuated system that proved unreliable. The rifle was originally designed for the .276 Pedersen cartridge, but General Douglas MacArthur intervened in 1932, insisting on retention of the .3036 Springfield round to utilize existing ammunition stockpiles. This decision delayed production, but ultimately proved fortuitous, as the powerful .306 cartridge provided excellent long-range performance and stopping power. The Arisaka rifles traced their lineage to Colonel Nariakira Arisaka's original Type 30 design of 1897, developed to replace the inadequate Murata rifles then in service. By World War II, Japanese forces primarily fielded two variants, the Type 38, adopted in 1905, and the Type 99, introduced in 1939, 2599th year of the Japanese calendar. The Type 38 fired the 6.5 by 50 mm semi-rimmed cartridge with a 139-grain bullet at 2,500 feet per second, generating approximately 1,650 foot-pounds of muzzle energy. The Type 99 used the more powerful 7.7 by 58 mm cartridge, firing a 182-grain bullet at 2,400 feet per second, with 2,300 foot-pounds of energy. Both Arisaka variants were bolt-action rifles with 5-round internal magazines, loaded via 5-round stripper clips. The Type 38's exceptional 31.4-inch barrel length made it one of the longest infantry rifles ever fielded, contributing to excellent long-range accuracy, but proving extremely cumbersome in jungle combat, where engagement distances rarely exceeded 100 yards. The Type 99, with its shorter 25.9-inch barrel, was more manageable, but arrived too late to fully replace the Type 38 in service. The Arisaka action itself was remarkably strong. Post-war testing proved it stronger than the American Springfield, British Lee Enfield, or German Mauser actions. The rifles featured an innovative safety mechanism that could be operated silently, and the bolt design incorporated a gas escape system to protect the shooter in case of a ruptured cartridge case. However, these engineering achievements could not overcome the fundamental limitation of manual bolt operation in an era of increasing firepower. The industrial disparity between America and Japan became starkly apparent in rifle production figures. Between 1936 and 1945, American factories produced approximately 5.4 million M1 Garand rifles. Springfield Armory led production with 3.5 million rifles, while Winchester Repeating Arms Company contributed 513,880 rifles. International Harvester and Harrington and Richardson would add additional production during the Korean War. Peak production at Springfield Armory reached 1,000 rifles per day by January 1944, with Winchester achieving 600 rifles daily at their height. This massive output ensured that virtually every American infantry soldier and Marine in the Pacific carried the semi-automatic rifle by mid-1943. The U.S. military's allocation system prioritized combat units, with the Marine Corps receiving 22,000 M1 Garands per month in early 1943, despite their initial reluctance to adopt the rifle. By the end of fiscal year 1942, the Marine Corps possessed 62,886 M1 Garands, though not all had reached frontline units. Japanese production presented a starkly different picture. From 1905 to 1945, Japan manufactured approximately 3 million Type 38 rifles across multiple arsenals, including Koishikawa, later Tokyo, Kokura, Nagoya, and Mukden Arsenal in occupied Manchuria. Type 99 production from 1939 to 1945 reached roughly 3.5 million units, manufactured at 9 different arsenals, including 2 outside Japan proper, Mukden in Manchukuo and Jinsen in Korea. Despite these substantial numbers totaling over 6 million rifles, Japan never achieved the production rates necessary to fully modernize their infantry arms. Many second-line troops, garrison forces, and naval infantry units still carried Type 38 rifles at war's end, creating logistics complications with 2 different ammunition types in use. American M1 Garand production maintained remarkably consistent quality throughout the war. Springfield Armory's quality control procedures rejected any rifle that failed to group within 5 inches at 100 yards. Interchangeability of parts between rifles from different manufacturers was strictly enforced through detailed specifications and gauging requirements. A damaged M1 Garand could be repaired in the field using parts salvaged from other rifles, regardless of manufacturer. The adoption of improved heat treatment processes in 1942 actually increased receiver strength over pre-war production. The finishes evolved for practicality rather than economy. The switch from blued steel to parkerizing improved corrosion resistance in tropical environments. Walnut stocks gave way to birch and other hardwoods due to walnut shortages, but functionality never suffered. Late war simplifications included stamped trigger guards replacing milled ones, but these changes were thoroughly tested to ensure reliability. Japanese manufacturing quality, conversely, deteriorated markedly as the war progressed. Early Type 99 rifles featured remarkable innovations: chrome-lined barrels, actually the first military rifle with this feature, anti-aircraft sights with folding arms for leading aerial targets, dust covers to protect the action, and integral wire monopods for stability. The finish was a deep blue, and stocks were made from quality Japanese hardwood with precise inletting. By 1944, these refinements had vanished under production pressure and material shortages. Last-ditch rifles exhibited rough machining marks, simplified fixed rear sights to eliminate the complex ladder sight, wooden butt plates replacing metal, and inferior wood with poor fitting. Some final production rifles lacked even basic finishing, with visible tool marks on all metal surfaces. The chrome lining disappeared as chromium became scarce, monopods were eliminated, and even the imperial chrysanthemum marking became crudely stamped rather than precisely rolled. The M1 Garand's semi-automatic action provided multiple tactical advantages beyond simple rate of fire. After each shot, the soldier maintained his sight picture and cheek weld, while the rifle automatically cycled. This meant faster target reacquisition and more accurate follow-up shots. The operating rod, driven by gas pressure tapped near the muzzle, cycled with sufficient force to function reliably even when fouled with mud, sand, volcanic ash, or carbon build-up from extended firing. The N-block clip system, while sometimes criticized for its distinctive ejection ping that allegedly alerted enemies the rifle was empty, actually provided the fastest reload of any contemporary military rifle. A trained soldier could reload in under 3 seconds, versus 5 to 7 seconds for a skilled user working with stripper clips on a bolt-action rifle. The clip ejection also provided immediate tactile and audible confirmation that the rifle was empty, preventing the confusion that could occur with rifles that didn't indicate an empty magazine. The M1's weight of 9.5 pounds, while heavy by modern standards, helped manage the substantial recoil of the .3006 cartridge, enabling rapid, accurate follow-up shots. The rifle's length of 43.6 inches was well balanced, with weight distributed between the heavy barrel and solid wood stock. The two-stage military trigger, while not match-grade, provided consistent performance that soldiers could master with training. The Arisaka rifles, despite their robust construction and theoretical accuracy, suffered from inherent limitations of bolt-action operation that became critical in Pacific combat. After each shot, the soldier had to manually cycle the bolt through 4 distinct movements, rotating the bolt handle upward, pulling it fully rearward to extract and eject the spent case, pushing it forward to strip a fresh round from the magazine and chamber it, then rotating the handle down to lock. This process broke the shooter's firing position, disrupted sight alignment, and required 2 to 3 seconds even for a well-trained soldier. The Type 38's extreme length of 50.3 inches made it particularly unsuitable for jungle warfare. Japanese soldiers found the rifle catching on vines, difficult to swing onto targets in dense vegetation, and nearly impossible to use effectively in bunkers or fortified positions. The long barrel, while providing excellent long-range accuracy with minimal bullet drop, was a liability when combat ranges rarely exceeded 100 yards and often occurred at conversational distances. The 5-round magazine capacity meant Japanese soldiers had to reload 60% more often than Americans to fire the same number of rounds. Loading via stripper clips required opening the bolt, positioning the clip correctly, pressing the rounds down into the magazine while withdrawing the clip, then closing the bolt, a process taking 5 to 7 seconds under ideal conditions and much longer under combat stress or in awkward firing positions. The .3006 Springfield cartridge used by the M1 Garand was already standard throughout the US military for the M1903 Springfield rifle, M1917 Browning machine gun, M1919 Browning machine gun, and Browning automatic rifle. This commonality simplified logistics immensely. A single ammunition type could supply rifles, automatic rifles, and machine guns. The cartridge's rimless design fed reliably from clips, belts, and magazines. American ammunition production was staggering. The Lake City Army ammunition plant alone could produce 200 million rounds annually by 1943. Frankfurt Arsenal, Denver Ordnance Plant, and other facilities added hundreds of millions more rounds. Quality control ensured consistent ballistics. M2 ball ammunition maintained a velocity variation of less than 40 feet per second between lots. Japanese forces faced a more complex ammunition situation. Units equipped with Type 38 rifles required 6.5 by 50 mm semi-rimmed ammunition, while those with Type 99s needed 7.7 by 58 mm rounds. The 6.5 mm round, while generating less recoil and allowing soldiers to carry more ammunition, proved inadequate against covered positions and lacked stopping power. The 7.7 mm round addressed these deficiencies but created a dual supply requirement. This 2-caliber system created persistent logistics problems. Documented instances include the 23rd Infantry Regiment on Guadalcanal receiving 7.7 mm ammunition for their Type 38 rifles, rendering both weapons and ammunition useless. Similar mix-ups occurred during the Philippines campaign and on isolated island garrisons. The semi-rimmed design of the 6.5 mm cartridge occasionally caused feeding problems in tropical conditions where ammunition became corroded. When the U.S. Army's 164th Infantry Regiment, a North Dakota National Guard unit, arrived at Guadalcanal on October 13, 1942, they brought with them something the Marines desperately wanted: M1 Garand rifles. The Marines, still armed primarily with M1903 Springfield bolt-action rifles, watched with a mixture of envy and skepticism as the Army soldiers unloaded their semi-automatic weapons. During the climactic battle for Henderson Field on October 24 to 25, 1942, the advantages became undeniably clear. Staff Sergeant Mitchell Page, though a Marine armed with a machine gun rather than a rifle, fought alongside soldiers of the 164th and witnessed their firepower firsthand. Private First Class James Cass of Company M, 164th Infantry, later recalled, "The Japs came at us in waves, barely visible in the darkness except for the glint of their bayonets. With our Garands, we could put 8 rounds into them before they covered 30 yards. Each man was like a machine gun section. We'd fire, the rifle would cycle itself, and we'd fire again. No working a bolt, no breaking our sight picture. Just squeeze, boom, 8 times before reloading." The 164th companies were fed into the line piecemeal as the Japanese attack developed, reinforcing Marine positions that were beginning to buckle. The devastating semi-automatic fire from the fresh Army troops helped stabilize the line. Colonel Bryant Moore, commanding the 164th, reported that his men expended over 250,000 rounds of 30 caliber .06 ammunition in the 2-day battle. Japanese bodies stacked up in front of positions held by the 164th, many killed by the rapid, accurate fire of M1 Garands. Marine Private Robert Leckie, who would later write the memoir Helmet for My Pillow, observed the Army troops in action. "We thought they were green, these dog faces with their newfangled rifles. But when the Japs charged, those Garands spoke with a voice we'd never heard before. It was like a continuous roar, not the sporadic crack-crack of our Springfields. Sergeant Masao Watanabe of the 29th Infantry Regiment, 2nd Division Sendai, survived the October offensive at Guadalcanal. In his post-war memoir discovered in Japanese military archives, he wrote, "We were told the Americans were soft, that our Yamato spirit would overcome their material advantages. Our officers assured us that one Japanese soldier was worth 10 Americans. But when we charged their lines that October night, it was like running into a wall of lead. Every American soldier seemed to have an automatic weapon. Our Arisaka rifles, which we operated the same way our fathers had in the Russo-Japanese War, felt like antiques. We would fire once, work the bolt while taking cover, then fire again. In that same time, the Americans had already fired 4 or 5 rounds." Watanabe noted that Japanese tactics, developed against Chinese forces, often armed with older weapons or limited ammunition, proved suicidal against American firepower. The banzai charge that had scattered Chinese conscripts melted away before American rifles that never seemed to stop firing. We could not get close enough to use our bayonets. Our supposed advantage in spirit and close combat meant nothing when we were shot down 50 meters from their lines. Lieutenant Hiroshi Takahashi of the 230th Infantry Regiment provided another perspective in a letter found on his body. "The American automatic rifles are devastating. Each soldier can fire as fast as our light machine guns. When we advance, it sounds like we are attacking a position defended entirely by machine guns. Our men fall before they can work their rifle bolts for a second shot." At Cape Gloucester in December 1943, Marines of the 1st Marine Division, now fully equipped with M1 Garands after their earlier experience on Guadalcanal, landed in torrential rain on New Britain. Private First Class Eugene Sledge, author of With the Old Breed, later wrote about the M1's performance in the horrific conditions. "That Garand was the most reliable piece of equipment we had. In rain that came down like waterfalls, in mud that sucked at you like quicksand, that rifle kept firing. The Japs with their bolt actions couldn't match our rate of fire. When they'd try to set up positions in the jungle, we could put so much lead into the trees that leaves would fall like rain." Marine Sergeant John Basilone, who would earn the Medal of Honor on Guadalcanal primarily for his actions with machine guns, also carried an M1 Garand as his personal weapon. He noted, "The Garand gave every Marine the firepower of 3 men with bolt-action rifles. In the jungle, where you might only get a glimpse of the enemy for a second or two, being able to fire multiple shots without working a bolt meant the difference between killing him or him escaping to kill you later." During the Battle of Saipan in June 1944, the largest banzai charge of the Pacific War saw over 3,000 Japanese soldiers assault American lines in a desperate pre-dawn attack on July 7th. Private First Class Harold Agerholm of the 4th Marine Division, armed with his M1 Garand, helped repel the massive assault. Corporal John Miller recalled, "The Japs came at us shoulder to shoulder, screaming like banshees. Our Garands never stopped firing. As fast as we could pull the trigger, we fired. The ping of empty clips ejecting was constant, like some deadly music. The Japs, with their bolt actions, couldn't match our volume of fire. They'd get 1 shot off, maybe 2 if they were lucky, before our semi-autos cut them down." On Peleliu in September 1944, the 1st Marine Division faced Japanese forces who had learned from earlier defeats. Instead of banzai charges, they defended from fortified positions. But even in this defensive role, the bolt-action Arisaka proved inferior. Marine Corporal R.V. Bergin recalled, "When we spotted a Jap position, we could saturate it with rifle fire. 4 or 5 of us with Garands could put 40 rounds into a cave mouth in the time it took them to fire 5 or 6 shots back. We'd keep their heads down while other Marines manoeuvred with flamethrowers or demolitions." American training doctrine for the M1 Garand emphasized exploiting the rifle's semi-automatic capability while maintaining accuracy. At training camps across the United States, Fort Benning, Camp Perry, Fort Ord, and dozens of others, Soldiers spent weeks mastering their rifles. The standard qualification course required engaging targets from 100 to 500 yards, with emphasis on rapid target engagement and smooth trigger control. The Army's Field Manual 23-5, Basic Field Manual, U.S. Rifle, caliber .30 M1, specified that soldiers should achieve a sustained rate of 40 to 50 aimed shots per minute in combat. Training emphasized the sight picture hold, maintaining proper sight alignment between shots since the semi-automatic action didn't require braking position. Soldiers learned to fire, observe impact, adjust, and re-engage quickly, taking full advantage of the M1's capability. Ammunition allocation for training was generous by any standard. Basic trainees fired a minimum of 210 rounds during qualification, with additional ammunition for advanced training. Combat units preparing for deployment often fired thousands of rounds per soldier. This extensive live-fire training built muscle memory and confidence that proved invaluable in combat. The Marine Corps, initially skeptical of the M1 Garand due to concerns about ammunition waste and degradation of marksmanship standards, eventually developed even more intensive training programs. Marine doctrine emphasized accurate volume of fire, not spray and pray, but rapid aimed shots that exploited the M1's semi-automatic action while maintaining the Corps' traditional marksmanship excellence. Japanese marksmanship training, rooted in samurai traditions of precision and discipline, emphasized the philosophy of one shot, one kill, ichigeki hisatsu. This principle reflected both spiritual beliefs about the warrior's focus and the practical limitation of bolt-action rifles. Japanese soldiers underwent extensive training at long range, with the Type 38's exceptional accuracy at distance considered a primary virtue. The Imperial Japanese Army's training manual stated, "The spirit of the attack must be the primary weapon of the infantry. The rifle and bayonet are merely extensions of the warrior's will." This emphasis on spiritual factors over material ones would prove catastrophic against American firepower. Japanese soldiers trained extensively in bayonet fighting, with daily practice in kata-like movements. The Type 38's exceptional length made it superior to most rifles in bayonet fighting, in theory. However, Pacific combat rarely offered the clear long-range shots for which Japanese soldiers had trained. The jungle terrain of Guadalcanal, New Guinea, and other battlefields limited visibility to mere yards. The banzai charges that had succeeded against poorly equipped Chinese forces or colonial troops met devastating failure against semi-automatic rifle fire. The sound of massed M1 Garand fire became a psychological weapon in itself. The rapid rhythmic crack of semi-automatic fire, punctuated by the distinctive metallic ping of ejecting clips, had a demoralizing effect on Japanese forces. A captured Japanese training document from 1943 instructed soldiers, "The American automatic rifles create a sound like many machine guns firing. Do not be discouraged by this volume of fire. Remember your spiritual superiority and press forward with determination." However, spiritual superiority proved inadequate against material reality. Japanese soldier Yukio Nakamura, captured on Saipan, told interrogators, "We were told Americans were cowards who relied on machines instead of warrior spirit. But they're rifles that fired without stopping. It was like fighting against a machine, not men. Our officers told us to charge with our bayonets, but we were cut down before we could get close enough to use them." Conversely, American troops gained immense confidence from their firepower advantage. Marine Corporal James Russell recalled, "Knowing you could put 8 rounds downrange as fast as you could pull the trigger, it made you feel invincible. When the Japs charged, you didn't panic. You just started shooting, and kept shooting until they stopped coming, or you heard that ping telling you to reload." At the squad level, the M1 Garand's advantage became even more pronounced. An American rifle squad of 12 men, armed with 10 M1 Garands and 2 Browning automatic rifles, could deliver 400 to 500 aimed rounds per minute in sustained fire. A comparable Japanese squad with Arisaka rifles, might manage 150 to 180 rounds per minute, assuming well-trained soldiers managing maximum bolt action speed. This disparity fundamentally altered small unit tactics. American squads could effectively conduct fire and maneuver, with one fire team laying down suppressive fire while another advanced. The volume of accurate semi-automatic fire could keep enemy heads down, allowing American forces to close with and destroy Japanese positions. Japanese squads, limited by their bolt-action rifles, struggled to generate sufficient suppressive fire while maintaining mobility. At company level, typically 200 men, the difference became overwhelming. An American rifle company could deliver devastating defensive fire against Japanese attacks. During the October 24th to 25th Battle for Henderson Field, companies of the 164th Infantry Regiment demonstrated this capability. Company G, 164th Infantry, reported expending 30,000 rounds of 1030-06 ammunition in one night of fighting, an average of 150 rounds per man, while suffering only light casualties. The mathematics were inexorable. A Japanese battalion of 800 men conducting a banzai charge faced American companies capable of putting 8,000 aimed rounds downrange per minute. Even accounting for darkness, confusion, and fear, the volume of semi-automatic fire created kill zones that human courage alone could not overcome. The M1 Garand's superiority contributed directly to the success of American island-hopping strategy. American forces could land on Japanese-held islands confident in their ability to establish and hold beachheads against counterattacks. The firepower of M1-equipped infantry meant smaller forces could hold larger perimeters, allowing rapid build-up of forces for breakout operations. On island after island, Tarawa, Kwajalein, Eniwetok, Saipan, Guam, Peleliu, Iwo Jima, Okinawa, the pattern repeated. Japanese forces, unable to match American firepower, resorted to increasingly desperate tactics. Banzai charges gave way to defense in depth, but even in fortified positions, the slow rate of fire from bolt-action rifles meant Japanese soldiers could rarely exploit opportunities when Americans exposed themselves during assault. The Japanese military's retention of bolt-action rifles stemmed significantly from their victory in the Russo-Japanese War of 1904 to 1905. In that conflict, Japanese infantry armed with Type 30 and Type 35 Arisaka rifles had defeated Russian forces through superior training, discipline, and tactical innovation. The Battle of Mukden and the Siege of Port Arthur seemed to validate the supremacy of Japanese warrior spirit over material factors. This success, however, created institutional blindness to technological change. The Japanese military establishment, dominated by officers who revered the Russo-Japanese War as Japan's coming of age as a great power, failed to recognize that warfare had fundamentally changed. World War I had demonstrated the dominance of firepower over elan, but Japan, not having participated significantly in that conflict, failed to internalize its lessons. The American adoption of the M1 Garand reflected hard-learned lessons from World War I. General John J. Pershing, commander of the American Expeditionary Force, had witnessed the devastating effect of automatic weapons in France. In 1918, he specifically called for development of a semi-automatic rifle, stating, "The soldier who can deliver the most accurate fire in the shortest time will dominate the battlefield of the future." This requirement launched the development process that would culminate in the M1 Garand. The United States spent nearly 2 decades perfecting the design, conducting extensive trials, and building the industrial infrastructure for mass production. By 1936, when the M1 was adopted, America had created not just a superior rifle, but an entire system for producing, maintaining, and supplying it. The Japanese did eventually recognize the need for semi-automatic rifles. Development of indigenous designs began in the 1930s, including the Type Co rifle designed by Kijiro Nambu and several gas-operated prototypes. However, these efforts received low priority, with resources directed toward aircraft, naval vessels, and other programs deemed more critical. Most tellingly, when the Japanese finally attempted to copy the M1 Garand as the Type 4 rifle, often mistakenly called Type 5, they managed to produce only 250 part sets with approximately 100 to 125 rifles actually assembled before war's end. The Type 4 chambered for 7.7mm Japanese ammunition and fed from a 10-round internal magazine loaded with two 5-round stripper clips, proved that Japan understood the M1's advantages but lacked the industrial capacity for mass production. The mathematics of firepower revealed an overwhelming American advantage. The M1 Garand firing M2 ball ammunition delivered 2,656 foot-pounds of energy at the muzzle. With a trained soldier firing 40 rounds per minute, this translated to 106,240 foot-pounds of energy delivered per minute. A bolt-action Type 99 Arisaka, firing the 7.7mm round with 2,300 foot-pounds per shot at a practical rate of 15 rounds per minute, delivered only 34,500 foot-pounds per minute, less than one-third the M1's energy output. The 30.06 Springfield's trajectory, while having more drop than the 6.5mm Arisaka at extreme range, proved superior at typical Pacific combat distances. At 300 yards, an unusually long engagement distance in jungle warfare, the .306 dropped 13.5 inches from line of sight while retaining 1,900 foot-pounds of energy, sufficient to penetrate multiple layers of jungle vegetation and still incapacitate enemy soldiers. The 6.5mm Arisaka, while dropping only 11 inches at the same range, retained only 1,100 foot-pounds of energy, often insufficient to penetrate cover. U.S. Army ordnance tests conducted at Aberdeen Proving Ground in 1940 quantified the M1's advantage. In controlled trials, soldiers with M1 Garands consistently achieved 24 aimed shots per minute at 200 yards with 90% hits on man-sized targets. Soldiers with M1903 Springfields, functionally identical to Arisaka operation, managed only 10 aimed shots with 85% accuracy. In rapid-fire scenarios simulating response to sudden attack, M1-equipped soldiers could engage 3 separate targets in the time bolt-action users engaged 1. Further testing examined sustained fire over longer periods. After 5 minutes of continuous firing, M1-equipped soldiers maintained 80% of their initial rate of fire, while bolt-action users dropped to 60% due to fatigue from working the bolt. The M1's semi-automatic operation required only trigger finger movement, while bolt-action operation demanded gross motor movements of the entire arm and shoulder. Combat statistics from Pacific battles revealed telling patterns. At Guadalcanal, Army units equipped with M1 Garands expended an average of 150 to 200 rounds per man per day of heavy combat. Marine units still equipped with Springfield rifles expended 60 to 80 rounds per man in similar conditions. This didn't represent ammunition waste, but rather the M1's ability to deliver effective fire at fleeting targets. Japanese forces, by comparison, rarely expended more than 40 to 50 rounds per man per day, limited by both ammunition supply and the mechanical constraints of bolt-action operation. Captured Japanese after-action reports frequently cited ammunition shortages, but even when ammunition was available, the slow rate of bolt-action fire limited consumption. Japanese military documents captured throughout the war revealed increasing awareness of American firepower superiority. A report from Lieutenant General Harukichi Hyakutake, commanding the 17th Army on Guadalcanal, stated in November 1942, "Enemy rifle fire has density and accuracy beyond our expectations. Each enemy soldier appears to be armed with an automatic weapon. Our forces cannot achieve fire superiority even with numerical advantage. Recommend emphasis on night operations and infiltration tactics to negate enemy firepower advantage." By 1944, Japanese tactical doctrine had evolved to acknowledge American material superiority. The instructions for the decisive battle, issued to defenders of the Mariana Islands, stated, "The enemy's automatic rifles and machine guns create an impenetrable wall of fire during daylight. All attacks must be conducted at night or under cover of adverse weather. Daytime movement invites annihilation." Lieutenant General Tadamichi Kuribayashi, the brilliant defender of Iwo Jima, wrote in January 1945, "The American automatic rifles are remarkable weapons. Each soldier possesses firepower equal to 3 or 4 of our riflemen. We must not waste lives in futile banzai charges against such firepower. Instead, we will make them pay for every metre of ground from fortified positions." His defensive strategy, avoiding suicidal charges in favour of defence in depth, prolonged the battle, but could not overcome American material superiority. The Japanese made several attempts to increase infantry firepower. The Type 100 submachine gun, introduced in 1942, was intended to provide automatic fire capability. However, production reached only about 27,000 units by war's end, insufficient to make a strategic difference. The weapon also fired the relatively weak 8mm Nambu pistol cartridge, lacking the range and stopping power needed for Pacific combat. More revealing was the Japanese effort to copy the M1 Garand itself. When American forces captured the Yokosuka Naval Arsenal in 1945, they discovered the Type 4 rifle program. Engineers at Yokosuka had reverse-engineered captured M1 Garands, modifying the design to use Japanese 7.7mm ammunition and feed from a 10-round internal magazine loaded with standard 5-round stripper clips. The Japanese had even improved certain aspects, using a rubber recoil pad and adding a last-round bolt hold-open feature. However, Japanese industry proved incapable of mass-producing this complex design. While they had manufactured parts for approximately 250 rifles, only 100 to 125 had been assembled into complete weapons. The Type 4 program revealed that Japanese military engineers fully understood the M1's advantages, but lacked the industrial infrastructure to produce it in meaningful numbers. Beyond industrial limitations, Japanese military culture resisted emphasizing material factors over spiritual ones. Colonel Masanobu Tsuji, a staff officer who served in multiple theaters, wrote after the war, "We knew the Americans had superior weapons, but to acknowledge this openly would have destroyed troop morale. We had to maintain belief in spiritual superiority, even as our soldiers were mowed down by American automatic weapons." This cultural resistance extended to training. Even as late as 1944, Japanese infantry training emphasized bayonet practice and night infiltration over marksmanship. The official infantry manual devoted 3 pages to rifle marksmanship, but 12 pages to spiritual preparation and bayonet fighting. This imbalance reflected deep-seated beliefs about the nature of warfare that technical realities could not easily overturn. The Battle of Okinawa, April through June 1945, provided the ultimate test of American firepower versus Japanese determination. Here, on Japan's doorstep, 180,000 American troops faced 120,000 Japanese defenders in what would become the bloodiest Pacific battle. The Japanese, under Lieutenant General Mitsuru Ushijima, had learned from previous defeats. Instead of wasteful banzai charges, they prepared elaborate defensive positions in Okinawa's rocky terrain. Yet even in defense, the limitations of bolt-action rifles proved critical. When American forces advanced, Japanese defenders armed with Arisaka rifles could rarely deliver sufficient volume of fire to stop them. Private First Class Desmond Doss, the conscientious objector medic who would receive the Medal of Honor, later described the sound of American rifles supporting his rescue efforts. The Garands were firing so fast it sounded like one continuous roar. Our boys could keep Japanese heads down while I went out for wounded. If they'd all had bolt-action rifles like the Japanese, I never could have saved those men. On May 4, 1945, the Japanese launched their only major counter-offensive of the battle. 5,000 Japanese soldiers attacked American lines in a coordinated assault designed to break through to the American rear areas. The attack began at 0430 hours with the largest artillery barrage Japanese forces had managed in the Pacific War, 12,000 rounds in 30 minutes. As Japanese infantry emerged from their positions and charged across open ground, they met a wall of American fire. Private First Class Martin Brennan of the 17th Infantry Regiment recalled, "They came at us in waves, but not the wild banzai charges we'd seen before. These were organised attacks with fire support, but our Garands never stopped firing. 8 shots, ping, reload, 8 more shots. The noise was incredible. The Japanese with their bolt actions would fire once, maybe twice, then our semi-auto fire would cut them down." The attack shattered against American firepower with horrific Japanese losses, 4,000 dead versus 714 American casualties. The rapid fire of thousands of M1 Garands, supported by automatic weapons and artillery, created killing fields where Japanese courage could not overcome material disadvantage. Even when Japanese soldiers reached American lines, the close-range firepower advantage of semi-automatic rifles proved decisive. Sergeant William Manchester, who would later become a renowned historian, fought on Okinawa with the 29th Marines. He wrote, "The M1 rifle was our best friend. In the chaos of close combat, being able to fire 8 times without working a bolt saved countless American lives. I saw Japanese soldiers trying to work their bolt actions while under fire, their hands shaking, fumbling with the mechanism while our boys simply kept pulling triggers." Planning for Operation Downfall, the invasion of Japan scheduled to begin with Operation Olympic in November 1945, assumed the M1 Garand would play a crucial role. Military planners studying casualty rates from Okinawa calculated that American forces would need massive firepower superiority to overcome expected Japanese resistance on the home islands. Production plans called for 500,000 replacement M1 rifles for the operation, with Springfield Armory and Winchester increasing production to a combined 2,000 rifles daily by August 1945. International Harvester was scheduled to begin production at a third facility. The ammunition requirement was staggering. Planners estimated needing 100 million rounds of .306 monthly for rifle use alone, testimony to the volume of fire expected from M1-equipped troops. Intelligence estimates suggested Japanese homeland defense would include 2.5 million Arisaka rifles in military hands, plus millions more distributed to civilian militia units. However, many of these were training rifles, obsolete models, or last-ditch single-shot weapons. The Type 99 substitute standard rifles being produced in 1945 were so crude that American intelligence questioned their safety for the user. American planners calculated that each invasion beach would require suppression of Japanese positions by naval gunfire and aerial bombardment, followed by assault troops whose M1 Garands would provide the volume of fire needed to overcome defenders. Studies of Pacific battles showed that American forces with semi-automatic rifles suffered 40% fewer casualties than projected for troops armed with bolt-action rifles in similar situations. The Japanese, recognizing their firepower disadvantage, planned to rely on suicide tactics, using civilians as human shields, and close-quarters combat in urban areas where rifle advantages would be minimized. Secret Japanese plans discovered after the war revealed desperate measures: bamboo spears for civilians, suicide swimmers with explosive charges, and even programs to spread biological weapons. The Arisaka rifle, once the pride of the Imperial Army, had been relegated to just one component of a desperate defense. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki ended the war before Operation Downfall commenced. Post-war analysis suggested American casualties could have reached 500,000 to 1 million, with Japanese casualties in the millions. The M1 Garand's firepower advantage would have been crucial, but at a terrible cost in lives on both sides. The M1 Garand's success influenced military rifle development worldwide. The Soviet Union, which had struggled with limited production of its SVT-40 semi-automatic rifle during World War II, developed the SKS carbine directly influenced by captured M1 Garands. China's Type 56 carbine was essentially a copy of the Soviet SKS. France developed the MAS-49, taking lessons from both the M1 Garand and their own pre-war semi-automatic experiments. Even Britain, traditionally conservative in small arms adoption and satisfied with their Lee-Enfield rifles during the war, began developing semi-automatic rifles immediately post-war. The Belgian FN-49, the Swiss Stu-57, and the Italian BM-59 all reflected lessons learned from America's semi-automatic success in World War II. The M1 Garand continued serving through the Korean War, where it again proved superior to bolt-action rifles used by Chinese and North Korean forces in the early stages of that conflict. American forces in Korea, armed with M1 Garands and supported by automatic weapons, repeatedly stopped massive Chinese human wave attacks reminiscent of Japanese banzai charges. The rifle served until gradually replaced by the M14 in the late 1950s and early 1960s. In a remarkable historical irony, the United States equipped the newly formed Japanese self-defense forces with M1 Garand rifles in the 1950s. Japanese soldiers who had faced the weapon now trained with it, experiencing firsthand the firepower advantage their predecessors had faced. The JSDF received approximately 150,000 M1 Garands through American military assistance programs. Japanese veterans interviewed in the 1960s consistently cited American firepower, particularly the M1 Garand, as a decisive factor in their defeat. Saburo Sakai, Japan's leading surviving fighter ace, stated, "We could match American courage, we could match American tactics, but we could never match American firepower. Every GI with his automatic rifle was worth 3 of our soldiers." Today, both the M1 Garand and Arisaka rifles are highly sought after by collectors, though for different reasons. The civilian marksmanship program has sold over 500,000 surplus M1 Garands to American citizens since its inception, making it one of the most common military collectibles. The rifle's distinctive ping has become iconic in popular culture, featured in countless war films, television shows, and video games. The M1's reputation as the greatest battle implement ever devised, General Patton's famous assessment, remains unchallenged among World War II infantry weapons. Modern shooting competitions still feature M1 Garand matches, with the rifle proving remarkably accurate even by contemporary standards. Japanese Arisaka rifles, particularly those with intact imperial chrysanthemum markings, are prized collectibles. The chrysanthemum, symbol of the emperor, was typically ground off rifles before surrender, making intact examples rare and valuable. Modern testing has proven the Arisaka action to be exceptionally strong, stronger even than the Mauser or Springfield actions, but this strength could not overcome the fundamental disadvantage of bolt-action operation. Interestingly, both rifles have seen combat in the 21st century. M1 Garands have appeared in conflicts in the Middle East, supplied decades ago through military aid programs. Arisaka rifles have been documented in use by insurgent forces in Afghanistan and Myanmar, testament to the durability of the design even if tactically obsolete. On that October night at Henderson Field in 1942, as Private Robert Youngdeer of the 164th Infantry Regiment and thousands of other American soldiers demonstrated the devastating effectiveness of semi-automatic rifle fire, they were proving a fundamental truth of modern warfare. Technological superiority, backed by industrial production, could determine the outcome of battle regardless of human courage or determination. The M1 Garand delivered 40 to 50 aimed shots per minute versus the Arisaka's 15 to 20, 8 rounds before reloading versus 5. Semi-automatic operation versus manual bolt manipulation. Weight of fire that could stop a banzai charge in its tracks versus single shots that required breaking sight picture to chamber the next round. These mathematical realities, multiplied across millions of individual firefights from Guadalcanal to Okinawa, helped determine the Pacific War's outcome. Lieutenant Kenji Yamamoto, who led that charge on October 24, 1942, with his Type 38 Arisaka, did not survive to see the dawn. His rifle, with its exceptional accuracy and admirable construction, its smooth bolt action and strong receiver, could not overcome the wall of semi-automatic fire that met his attack. Found after the battle, his weapon had 3 rounds remaining in the magazine. He had managed to fire only twice while advancing 100 yards under the concentrated fire of M1 Garands. Around him lay dozens of his soldiers, most with full or nearly full magazines in their Arisakas, having been cut down before they could effectively return fire. The story of the M1 Garand versus the Arisaka rifles ultimately tells a larger truth about World War II in the Pacific, that courage and determination, while admirable and necessary, could not overcome the arithmetic of firepower. The United States had produced 5.4 million M1 Garands by war's end, ensuring that virtually every American rifleman possessed semi-automatic firepower. Japan, despite producing over 6.5 million rifles total, never escaped the technological constraints of bolt-action operation, never could match the volume of aimed fire that semi-automatic rifles produced. General George S. Patton's assessment of the M1 Garand as the greatest battle implement ever devised was not hyperbole, but mathematical fact. From the steaming jungles of Guadalcanal, where the rifle first proved its worth in American Army hands, to the volcanic ash of Iwo Jima, where Marines used it to break Japanese strongpoints, from the monsoon-soaked horror of Cape Gloucester to the desperate urban combat anticipated for Japan itself, the M1 Garand proved itself as more than just a rifle. It was a war-winning weapon that gave American forces a decisive edge in the most brutal theatre of the world's most terrible war. The distinctive ping of an ejecting en bloc clip became the sound of American victory in the Pacific, a sound that meant 8 enemy soldiers would never reach American lines, a sound that meant another Japanese position had been suppressed, another island secured, another step taken toward Tokyo Bay. Against it, the bolt-action Arisaka, for all its virtues of strength and accuracy, was simply fighting the last war with the last war's technology. In the final analysis, the Pacific War was won not by any single weapon or battle, but by the cumulative effect of American industrial might and technological superiority. The M1 Garand stood as perhaps the most visible symbol of this advantage at the individual soldier level. Every GI or Marine with an M1 possessed the firepower of 3 enemy soldiers, an advantage that no amount of spiritual training or warrior tradition could overcome. The Japanese soldier, brave as he was, dedicated as he was, skilled as he was, could work his rifle bolt only so fast. And in modern war, rate of fire multiplied by accuracy equaled survival. The Arisaka rifles now rest in museums and private collections, respected for their quality and historical significance. The M1 Garand likewise has passed into history, though many still function perfectly on rifle ranges across America. But in their time, in the desperate struggle across the Pacific, one was clearly superior to the other. The semi-automatic rifle had made every American soldier a base of fire unto himself, and that advantage, multiplied across the vast expanses of the Pacific theatre, helped ensure Allied victory. The last word belonged not to courage or spirit, but to the mechanical precision of gas-operated semi-automatic fire. 8 rounds, 1 pull of the trigger each, before that distinctive ping announced it was time to reload and continue the fight.